Good evening, everyone. It is Sunday evening, October 2nd. Wow, October already. We are 2 weeks away from the end of our term, and I just wanted to go over some of my notes for you this week and the assignments that are upcoming. I'm posting this on Sunday evening because I wanted to get a chance to look at some of your submissions and make sure that everybody was on track as far as what was submitted this week for the signature assignment, the summative unit. So far, as I've just kind of glanced through them, I haven't graded any of them yet. They look like they're pretty much on target and what was being asked of you in the assignment. One of the pieces that I will be addressing in a few minutes is the Stage 2 summative assessment piece, that addressing the issue of the rigor, but we'll do that in just a moment. Everything else looks pretty good. As far as that assignment goes, if you have not yet turned it in, just a few reminders. Some of you did them a little bit differently. Some of you did a separate template for each of the lessons. That was fine, or you could have put them all on the same template. Either way will work for me. Your enduring understandings cut across everything of the unit, whether it's the assessments or the activities that you designed, so those remain the same for each part of the unit. What might vary are the objectives that you put into each lesson plan. And so if you wanted to stipulate those for each section of the lessons, that would be fine as well. Let's see. Other evidence is your formative assessment pieces. So you should have a fair amount of formative assessments in there because you're covering a number of lessons. So how are you checking during those lessons? What I saw looked pretty good, but as I said, I haven't begun to grade them yet. Because this rubric is lengthy and this is a signature assignment, it's probably going to take me some time to get this done. Don't expect to see your grades up and posted much before Friday or Saturday. Actually, it's going to take me a while to do that. I also have a super busy week ahead of me, and I'll do those as quickly as I can, but as I've told you in the past, I like to do 2, 3, 4 at a time so that I'm not rushing myself through them. All right, let's look at what's due this week. For week 7, your main piece of work that is due is for your discussion board, and this has to do with a presentation that you might make to your staff regarding 21st century learning. And your instructions talk about presenting to your colleagues in a way to educate and encourage them about the importance of understanding and utilizing 21st century learning teaching methods and strategies. So you're asked to create some form of multimedia presentation, whether it be Google Slides, Prezi, Powtoon, or any other multimedia of your choice. I wouldn't make this super long because, again, it's a discussion board entry and it's going to be worth 10 points, so keep that in mind. There are a number of resources that are listed on the website for you to watch and to respond to, and I'm just going to give you a quick overview of what these resources are. One of them is called Education and the Role of the Educator in the Future. This is a 10-topic publication, and it breaks it down into 10 subtopics that include the following: customizing learning for the learner, learning in both virtual and physical arenas. Learning is non-linear. Learning with thinking machines. That one might spark your curiosity. Learning is focused on multimedia. Learning is collaborative, learning is whole mind, learning is based on discovery, learning is problem-based, and learning is holistic. So perhaps even taking 2 or 3 of those and pulling some important points out of those might be a good part of your presentation. There is a Milton Chen video also. It's 1 minute 16 seconds, very short, very interesting, and it's talking about the teacher as the coach or facilitator. There are 2 TED Talks. One is Conrad Wolfram. I'm not familiar with that name. His TED Talk is about 20 minutes, and it's on math instruction and how that should be changing for the 21st century. The other TED Talk is called Bring on the Learning Revolution, and it is once again Sir Kenneth Robinson, the man you listened to the first week. It's very engaging, as was his first one. And it's also about 20 minutes, and it's about revolution in education. Not just changing things, but having an entire revolution of how we teach. And then there is a 19-page guide put out by the Partnership for 21st Century Skills. It's called 21st Century Skills, Education, and Competitiveness. You might skip over to page 10. There's a little condensed page there called What We Need to Do Now, and that might give you kind of an overview of what's presented in that guide. This is the same group that published the works on the 4 C's, if you're familiar with that. So use those resources as you will. I don't think you need to use all of them. Pick and choose from them and put together something that might support your ideas on 21st century teaching and learning. Also on the resources this week, I had posted this last year, is the ELA framework, chapter 8, a few pages about assessment. So as you're working towards your last piece for week 8, which talks about your assessments in more detail, I just want to remind you to really think about the purpose of the assessment. Why have you put this particular assessment in there, and what will the results of that assessment mean? If this is a unit that you've taught in the past, please don't include assessments that you've always done just because you've always done them. I want you to really rethink, reevaluate your current practices and see if there might be something with a different slant or a different way to look at this. You want to be thinking about assessment for learning, which would be your formative assessment, and assessment of learning, or your summative assessments, and how are they different and what do they look like in your unit. There is also a resource on the website this week called The Best Value in Formative Assessment, and it's an article about the differences between formative and summative assessments, how to use them, and how to even use some summative assessments for formative purposes. So that was a nice, interesting little article that's on there as well. Okay, so for week 8, as you're looking at that last submission, it has to do with your assessments. And there will be 3 parts to this piece that you turn in. So you are first of all going to describe in detail a minimum of 1 assessment for each of the lessons that you put into your unit plan this week. Also, you need to put in any handouts, rubrics, or examples of these assessments. Please know that some of these assessments can be simple. They can be post-it note responses. They can be tickets out the door. So in those cases, you really don't have to present a rubric, but you should be describing how you're going to use this information. What is this going to tell you about the lesson for the next day? It says that you need to make sure to list all pertinent standards, objectives, and essential questions. So what I want you to understand is when you do this, you're taking your same essential questions that you submitted in your unit. You're taking your same standards that you submitted in your unit. That can be at the head, the front part of this submission, because those things are not going to change over any of these assessments. Then if you want to take your objectives the same way you linked them to each individual lesson, you can put those same objectives for each of the assessments that went with each of those lessons. I hope that makes sense to you. I don't think that you need to rewrite and restate your essential questions and your standards with every single assessment that you're describing. So that to me would be the easiest way for you to do that. The second part of this assignment is your summative assessment. And the one thing I want to make sure to be really clear about is this assessment needs to be rigorous. It needs to be one that shows your students can demonstrate mastery of your essential questions that you began with. So that's where I'm going to be going back to. When I look at your unit plans this week, I'm going to look at that summative assessment that you've stated, and then in more detail in week 8, does that assessment show enough rigor to make sure that your students can indeed answer your essential questions? Those summative assessments can take many forms. They can be presented in a number of ways. They can be student products that are using multimedia. They can be student products that use different forms of art or music or song, poetry. They can be written compositions. I personally don't like to see a pencil paper test. I know in the directions they said that this could be a pencil paper test, so I can't say it can't be. But if you look at the Understanding by Design template, it's asking you for a performance task, and a pencil paper test is not a performance task. So try and be creative in designing this last piece in detail and make it something that might show some differentiation, might show some technology involved, but make sure that it's rigorous enough to answer those questions. Lastly, you're being asked to include a one-page reflection paper for this last assignment. And you're doing that in APA style. The directions are very clear on the Blackboard site, so just follow those carefully and include all of the elements that they're asking. So once again, you have 2 weeks to finish this assessment piece. So what you want to focus on mostly for this week is looking at those resources that are online and creating a multimedia presentation to upload for next week. So thank you to all of you who have clarified questions with me and send me emails. I hope I'm getting back soon enough to you. I try and check those as often as I can. So again, if you have any questions, I'm always here for you. And I will be seeing you one last time next week. Thanks so much. Bye.